"This is not wizardry, but a power far older," said Gandalf. "A power that walked the earth ere elf sang or hammer rang. Ere iron was found or tree was hewn, when young was mountain under moon, ere ring was made or wrought was woe, it walked the forest long ago." And to their amazement they found that the road ran on, and the deeping stream beside it, and the sky was open above and full of golden light. But on either side the great aisles of the wood were already wrapped in dusk, stretching away into impenetrable shadows. And there they heard the creaking and groaning of boughs, and far cries, and a rumour of wordless voices murmuring angrily. No orc or other living creature could be seen. "What has become of the miserable orcs?" said Legolas. "That, I think, no one will ever know," said Gandalf. The company turned then away from the combe and from the wood and took the road towards the fords. They had passed into Nan Curanir, the Wizard's Vale. That was a sheltered valley open only to the south. Once it had been fair and green, and through it the Isen flowed, already deep and strong before it found the plains, for it was fed by many springs and lesser streams among the rain-washed hills, and all about it there had lain a pleasant fertile land. But it was not so now. Beneath the walls of Isengard there still were acres tilled by the slaves of Saruman, but most of the valley had become a wilderness of weeds and thorns. Brambles trailed upon the ground, or clambering over bush and bank made shaggy caves where small beasts housed. Beneath the mountain's arm within the Wizard's Vale, through years uncounted, had stood that ancient place that men called Isengard. Partly it was shaped in the making of the mountains, but mighty works the men of Westerness had wrought there of old, and Saruman had dwelt there long and had not been idle. This was its fashion, while Saruman was at his height, accounted by many the chief of wizards. A great ring wall of stone, like towering cliffs, stood out from the shelter of the mountainside, from which it ran and then returned again. One entrance only was there made in it, a great arch delved in the southern wall. We came down over the last ridge into Nan Curanir, after night had fallen, Mary continued.
We marched to war, to Isengard.
By that time, there were many Ents inside Isengard. Some had followed Quickbeam, and others had burst in from the north and east. They were roaming about and doing a great deal of damage. Suddenly up came fires and foul fumes. The vents and shafts all over the plain began to spout and belch. Several of the Ents got scorched and blistered.
Boom, boom. The gate of Isengard could not hold us back. We were positively hasty.
One of them, Beachbone I think he was called, a very tall handsome Ent, got caught in a spray of some liquid fire and burnt like a torch. A horrible sight. That sent them mad. I thought that they had been really roused before, but I was wrong. I saw what it was like at last. It was staggering. They roared and boomed and trumpeted until stones began to crack and fall at the mere noise of them. Mary and I lay on the ground and stuffed our cloaks into our ears. Round and round the rock of Orthanc the Ents went striding and storming like a howling gale, breaking pillars, hurling avalanches of boulders down the shafts, tossing up huge slabs of stone into the air like leaves. The tower was in the middle of a spinning whirlwind.
Fought with smoke.
In the afternoon we walked round the circle and went to have a look at what was going on. There was a great shadowy wood of Huorns at the head of the valley and another round the northern wall. We did not dare to go in, but there was a rending, tearing noise of work going on inside. Ents and Huorns were digging great pits and trenches and making great pools and dams, gathering all the waters of the Isen and every other spring and stream that they could find. We left them to it. Isengard began to fill up with black creeping streams and pools. They glittered in the last light of the moon as they spread over the plain. Every now and then the waters found their way down into some shaft or spout hole. Great white steams hissed up. Smoke rose in billows. There were explosions and gusts of fire. One great coil of vapour went whirling up, twisting round and round Orthanc, until it looked like a tall peak of cloud, fiery underneath and moonlit above.
I set a watch upon the tower. Saruman will work no further harm.
And still more water poured in, until at last Isengard looked like a huge flat saucepan, all steaming and bubbling. Once it had been green and filled with avenues and groves of fruitful trees, watered by streams that flowed from the mountains to a lake. But no green thing grew there in the latter days of Saruman. The roads were paved with stone flags, dark and hard, and beside their borders, instead of trees, there marched long lines of pillars, some of marble, some of copper and of iron, joined by heavy chains. To the centre all the roads ran between their chains. There stood a tower of marvellous shape. It was fashioned by the builders of old who smoothed the ring of Isengard, and yet it seemed a thing not made by the craft of men, but riven from the bones of the earth in the ancient torment of the hills. A peak and isle of rock it was, black and gleaming hard. 4 mighty piers of many-sided stone were welded into one, but near the summit they opened into gaping horns, their pinnacles sharp as the points of spears, keen-edged as knives. Between them was a narrow space, and there upon a floor of polished stone, written with strange signs, a man might stand 500 feet above the plain. This was Orthanc, the citadel of Saruman, the name of which had, by design or chance, a twofold meaning. For in the Elvish speech, Orthanc signifies Mount Fang, but in the language of the Mark of old, the cunning mind. They came now to the foot of Orthanc. It was black, and the rock gleamed as if it were wet. The many faces of the stone had sharp edges, as though they had been newly chiselled. A few scorings and small flake-like splinters near the base were all the marks that it bore of the fury of the Ents. Gandalf stood before the door of Orthanc and beat on it with his staff. It rang with a hollow sound. "Saruman! Saruman!" he cried in a loud commanding voice. "Saruman, come forth!" Suddenly another voice spoke, low and melodious, its very sound an enchantment. Those who listened unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard, and if they did, they wondered, for little power remained in them. Mostly they remembered only that it was a delight to hear the voice speaking. All that it said seemed wise and reasonable, and desire awoke in them by swift agreement to seem wise themselves. "I say, Theoden King, shall we have peace and friendship, you and I? It is ours to command." "We will have peace," said Theoden at last thickly and with an effort. Several of the riders cried out gladly. Theoden held up his hand. "Yes, we will have peace," he said now in a clear voice. "We will have peace when you and all your works have perished, and the works of your dark master to whom you would deliver us. You are a liar, Saruman, and a corrupter of men's hearts. You hold out your hand to me, and I perceive only a finger of the claw of Mordor, cruel and cold."
I know Gandalf too well to believe he comes from my counsel. But you, Theoden King, it is not too late. Only I can help you now. Bah! You do not know the path of wisdom. Good day!
Saruman! I did not say you could go. Gandalf the Grey was betrayed by you, but I am not he. I am Gandalf the White, returned from death. Saruman, your staff is broken. You will work no more mischief here.
The sun was sinking behind the long western arm of the mountains when Gandalf and his companions, and the king with his riders, set out again from Isengard. They came to the Pillar of the White Hand. The pillar was still standing, but the graven hand had been thrown down and broken into small pieces. When we came, we meant to go straight from Isengard back to the king's house at Edoras over the plains, a ride of some days. But we've taken thought and changed the plan. Messengers have gone ahead to Helm's Deep to warn them that the king is returning tomorrow. He will ride from there with many men to Dunharrow by paths among the hills. The road passed slowly, winding down the valley. Now further and now nearer, Isen flowed in its stony bed. At last they halted. Then they turned aside, leaving the highway and taking to the sweet upland turf again. Going westward a mile or so, they came to a dale. Guards were set, two at a watch. The rest, after they had supped, wrapped themselves in a cloak and blanket and slept. The hobbits lay in a corner by themselves upon a pile of old bracken. Merry was sleepy, but Pippin now seemed curiously restless. The bracken cracked and rustled as he twisted and turned. The air seemed still and tense about him. At first the globe was dark, black as jet, with the moonlight gleaming on its surface. Then there came a faint glow and stir in the heart of it, and it held his eyes, so that now he could not look away. Soon all the inside seemed on fire. The ball was spinning, or the lights within were revolving. Suddenly the lights went out. He gave a gasp and struggled, but he remained bent, clasping the ball with both hands. Closer and closer he bent, and then became rigid. His lips moved soundlessly for a while. Then, with a strangled cry, he fell back and lay still. Then he came, said Pippin. He did not speak so that I could hear words. He just looked, and I understood.
We shall meet again soon. Tell Saruman that this dainty is not for him. I will send for it at once. Do you understand? Say just that.
The hour is now come, I think, said Aragorn. Not yet, said Gandalf. There remains a short while of doubt which we must use. The enemy, it is clear, thought that the stone was in Orthanc. Why should he not? And that therefore the hobbit was captive there, driven to look in the glass for his torment by Saruman. That dark mind we filled now with the voice and face of the hobbit, and with expectation. It may take some time before he learns his error. We must snatch that time. We have been too leisurely. We must move. The neighbourhood of Isengard is no place now to linger in. I will ride ahead at once with Peregrine Took. It will be better for him than lying in the dark while others sleep. I will keep Eomer and 10 riders, said the king. They shall ride with me at early day. The rest may go with Aragorn and ride as soon as they have a mind. As you will, said Gandalf, but make all the speed you may to the cover of the hills, to Helm's Deep. Over the plains, Shadowfax was flying, needing no urging and no guidance. Less than an hour had passed, and they had reached the fords of Isen and crossed them. The mound of the riders and its cold spears lay grey behind them. Yonder are the Thirahern peaks like black spears. It will not be long before we reach the branching roads and come to the Deeping Combe, where the battle was fought 2 nights ago. I thought you were going to stop at Helm's Deep, said Pippin. Where are we going then? To Minas Tirith, before the seas of war surround it. Oh, and how far is that? Leagues upon leagues, answered Gandalf. Thrice as far as the dwellings of King Theoden, and they are more than 100 miles east from here, as the messengers of Mordor fly. Shadowfax must run a longer road. Which will prove the swifter? We shall ride now till daybreak, and that is some hours away. Then even Shadowfax must rest, in some hollow of the hills, at Edoras, I hope. Sleep if you can. You may see the first glimmer of dawn upon the golden roof of the house of Eorl, and in 2 days thence you shall see the purple shadow of Mount Mindollurin, and the walls of the Tower of Denethor white in the morning.